Welcome back to the United Stand. Hit the like button. Get that done right now. It's free. It's great for the channel. A lot of people forget. So get it done now. Lots to talk about. Loads to go through this evening. Football is returning. But of course, there's so many stories to jump into and delve into. Mainoo and his future at the club. More talk this evening that he could be on his way out for around £70 million. We're going to delve into that. We're looking at Alejandro Garnacho as well. A big story this afternoon came out that he could also leave in the next window. Although Amorim has been relying on him, there's other players that he sees that are available in the market who he believes could do a better job. We're also going to talk about our chances in the Europa League as well, with Polymarket Sport having United as second favourites to win the Europa League. I want to get your views. I want to get your opinions on that as well. Plus, I want to talk Marcus Rashford with you this evening as well, because the mainstream media are talking that United have made a big mistake. Man United shouldn't have let him go. You look at his numbers, you look at his return, you look at his performances, and this was a big, glaring error by the football club. And I don't think it's as simple or as straightforward as they're making out. But of course, I want to ascertain and understand your opinions. I want to know how you see these situations as well. So make sure you get your comments in, whether it be the live chat, whether it be the comment section afterwards. Let's go and get that done. Let's also try and get this past at least 1,000 likes whilst we are live on the air as well. Plus, share this in your group chats. Share it with your friends, family that are United fans, because we want to get as many opinions on this as possible. Comment straight away from Tony P here says, Antony sell for 40 to 50, Rashford the same. Yeah, listen, I personally, I'm loving what Rashford is doing at Villa, because I think he has ideals. I think he has a feeling that he could go elsewhere. We could raise a little bit more money than that. Plus, we'll get onto Antony later, and something that you all need to do as Man United fans to get more money into this football club. Whether we like it or not, we've got to raise the income. There's no doubt. But I wanted to go with the lead story this evening. I want to read it to you here. This is from Peter Hall. Peter Hall says that Amorim is not completely convinced Kobbie Mainoo has the fitness levels to be a success in his system. The club would therefore be reluctant to sell him for offers of around £70 million. So the claim being made is essentially that it also goes on to say cashing in on either Mainoo or Garnacho remains a serious option this summer. Mainoo is understood to be entertaining the idea of seeking a move away from the club, with the youngster yet to put pen to paper on a new contract. Now, look, some of you may disregard this story and say Peter Hall is making this up. Of course, the manager rates him. Of course, the manager likes him. He is not going. G-Man here in the comments says Mainoo has to stay. Then you get Sky Arnie, who says Mainoo is slow. And I look at it this way. There's subjectivity and there's objectivity. So subjectively, I don't want Mainoo to leave. I rate him. I think he's a fantastic footballer. I actually think his physical attributes are a little bit disrespected. Yes, he isn't electric with pace, but I don't think he's this absolute slouch that people talk, the way people speak about him, like he's slow. He has good power. His ability to intercept and win those physical battles is good, but he's also still a fledgling player. And I think these areas of his game will get better over the course of time. Now, the objective part of my brain, though, says this. For Man United to become successful again, we had to pick a footballing ideology. Now, we all need to be objective in that, because it was impossible for the club to pick a style of play and a head coach to bring it to life that everybody was going to agree with in the first instance, because we all have preferences. The same as if they were going to pick a new anthem for before a game starts. There's no way they could pick an anthem that on day one everybody loved. Liverpool fans sing You'll Never Walk Alone. I guarantee when they first introduced that in the 60s or whenever it was, I bet there were some fans that didn't like the song, because that's the nature of human beings. We're subjective and we have different tastes. So you have to be objective in that first regard. But also, when you introduce a new style of football, if the club is truly going to stick with a brand and therefore a profile of player that's needed to build a squad, irrespective of who the manager is. And that's how our club should be run in the modern day game. There is always going to be casualties. There's often players that thrive in the short term in a new system like that you maybe think they'd be first out the door. There's often also players that you think are going to kill it, that are going to be amazing, that are going to go to the next level, who don't fit. And it's gutting. So me personally, I don't think Mainoo will go. I think he'll stay. I believe the manager rates him. I believe the manager really likes him. But let's just live in a world where this story is true, and let's be objective for a moment. If we're going to spend hundreds of millions building a squad to play a particular brand of football, that the key football decision makers, the head coach of the team as an example, if there is a player that we all rate, but they don't think is good enough, objectively speaking, I will stand by the decision. I will judge them on the outcome. So I'll look 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line. Let's see if we're a better team. Let's see if we get back to winning. Let's see what we're achieving. And if we're doing very well, winning major trophies, winning leagues, Champions Leagues, by the way, none of us will remember who left. No one will remember who went. And I'm sure in those early Fergie years from 1985 right through to the early 90s, I bet there were casualties in his team. I bet he got rid of some good, talented young players or some really experienced stars that everybody at the time rated. Once he started winning the FA Cup, the Cup Winners' Cup, the Prem, doing the double, doing three-peats, I bet people very quickly forgot about those casualties. So I think we have to look at this open-ended. But in the short term, my subjective reaction to this is I'm dead set against it. I don't like the idea. I think Mainoo is a generational talent. I think there is so much ability in there. I hope that Peter Hall is completely and utterly wrong with what he is reporting here. I rate Mainoo. I think he does have the physical prowess. I think he does have the technical ability where he could become an absolutely integral part of Amorim's system, the club's footballing philosophy for years and years to come. But as ever, I need to get your breakdown on this. Tony P says Mainoo not to get 180k a week. No way. I also agree. I wouldn't go as high on his salary just yet. I think we've got to get away from paying young players so soon in their careers absolute premium level wages. I think we have to build them up slower and not give them the world straight away. That's been one of the biggest problems that we've had at the football club. There's no doubt at all. This year says, I remember a small, wheezy ginger midfielder who had no pace. He did quite well for us. Yeah, Darren, that's why. I mean, listen, I think that Mainoo has got so much off of Manchester United. I don't necessarily believe this story. But again, what I think it's really important to do on a fan channel like the United Stand, I think any football content creator, is when you're the host and when you're, I suppose, conducting a conversation as we're all having now. Yes, it's digital, but it's still a conversation. It's still discourse. To completely disregard an article and not talk about it, not to look at it from another perspective, to not present other ideas, thoughts, and I just find it such a reductive way to discuss football. If I don't personally like it, because there are some people that believe what Peter Hall's saying holds truth about the athleticism. I agree with you. I think he's supreme technical ability coupled with very good physical attributes. I think Mainoo could become a superstar for this team. I also will say this in defense of Manchester United. It is not inconceivable or beyond the realms of possibility that this is just the media trying to pour petrol over the fires that are going on. There's no doubt about it at all. We've got a poll running for you as well, actually, here. Should United sell Mainoo for 70 million? I click straight away no on that poll, because I absolutely wouldn't do it. So I'm clicking no on that poll myself. I'd love to know what you guys have clicked on. And right now, already 67%, 66% saying no. But it's why you got to have these conversations. 35% at the moment are now saying yes, they would. And those 35% should at the very least be listened to when it comes to these conversations. But let us know what you think and what you feel. Another story that's also emerged today is that Alejandro Garnacho could leave Man United this forthcoming summer. The article here goes on to say that he could leave in the next transfer window. Ruben Amorim counts on him, but prefers other players in the position. Now, I am less concerned about Garnacho leaving subjectively than I am Kobbie Mainoo, but I still rate and like Garnacho. I still think there is a player in there. However, we need more goals. We need more creativity. We need more consistency in those areas. And this season, it's been a very transitional season for the club, for the squad, training, and you've really seen that impact Garnacho. I think that the club look at Garnacho and believe if a team comes in with a 60, 70 million pound offer with the targets that Ruben Amorim has, that he sees as, you know, this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players on our transfer list are all better, are all more suited, have more power, have more pace, have more ability, will help us create and score more goals. I can see a world where this happens. I'm less married to the idea of Garnacho staying than I am Mainoo, because I think Mainoo is a better midfielder than Garnacho is an attacker, even though I think Garnacho is a very good player. I think there's a very good player in there. I'm just not sure if Amorim is totally sold on him. If I'm being honest, I just don't think he's totally sold. Where I actually feel that if Mainoo had not picked up that injury, you'd have seen Mainoo playing a lot of games recently. I don't think he'd have been sitting on the bench. And, you know, had Antony or had the Rashford situation gone differently, I think Garnacho could have been someone that went in January instead. But this move, this talk of Garnacho leaving won't go away at all. And I think if Mainoo, for instance, signs a new deal in the next few weeks, I think the conversation around him leaving will completely and utterly end. But Garnacho's, it's an ongoing conversation at all times. So I want to get your views and I want to get your opinions on that. This here from and look says Garnacho stay, Mainoo out. I'd love you to break down why. I'd love you to break down why for us, mate, on that. Terry, where does Mainoo play? Sorry, I want to go back to that comment. Terry, where does Mainoo play and who is been the better player this season, Garni or Mainoo? Well, Mainoo plays, I think he plays in one of two positions. He can play in that kind of double pivot in the midfield because I believe he can do the box-to-box role well. Some people want to see him played more in that 10 position. And we tried him in the 10. He looked brilliant. We then put him into the false 9 role, and it didn't work out well. And then he picked up an injury, which is heavily frustrating because I believe that Ruben Amorim made a mistake by putting him in the false 9 role. But I believe would have given him another opportunity in the 10 position. And I think that Mainoo has the ability to do that very, very well indeed. I prefer Mainoo further up the pitch, although statistically speaking, he looks, when he plays a deep line role and he's winning the ball back, he's making interceptions, he's got some fantastic numbers in that area. So we know he can play at both ends of the spectrum in terms of being a midfield player. And we have another poll here that what is Mainoo's best position? 2-man midfield or behind the striker? I'm going for behind the striker, but currently midfield 2 is currently winning with 55% of that vote. But for me, I believe that when you look at the way Amorim wants to play, there will be players that have specialisms, like a Ugarte. But I believe what Ruben Amorim and I believe what Man United want, and when you look at the way we play football, you need it, is I do think we need players that have some versatility. And I think Mainoo gives that to us. He can play in that 2. He can play in that 10 position. Ahmad can play right wing back. He can play in that 10 position, as an example. Dorgu can play in the right or left wing back position. He can play right back or left back if we ever went to a flat back 4. And he can also play in the number 10 stroke wing position if it was needed. And I know there's always these big debates that go on in football now. We need specialist. And I bought into that idea for a long time. Yeah, of course, that's what you need. Specialist in every role. But then you start to think about football in real terms, in reality. How many seasons do you keep a squad fit enough for every specialist to play in their role? How often do you have to rotate? How often do you actually have to go, hang on a minute, I've got 3 centre-backs out injured. I'm going to have to move a right back into that area. Or I've got to move a midfield player back into a centre-back role for a period of time. How often have we seen in Man United's pomp, Ryan Giggs played as a striker on a good number of occasions in the 90s when we had crises of injuries up front, as an example. You need players that have versatility in their game. You still need them to be of a very high level of player, but you need that versatility within your squad because of injuries, or sometimes because you're playing a team where you need to do something different. United have had a number of players like that. Park Ji-sung was an absolute hugely integral part of doing our three-peat, winning our Champions League, the League Cups we won in that time. You look back through those campaigns and those games. Sometimes he played on the wing, sometimes in midfield. Other times he was told, you're just marking someone all game. To kind of discount the need for that versatility, I think, and I started doing that for a while. I got suckered into that talk. I think personally that is wrong. The poll running for where he plays best, that's so split. 49% say behind the striker, 52% say in the midfield too. Well, that tells me by those numbers that he's versatile. Mainoo is also very good on the ball, which helps him play through the middle. Emily Derry, I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree with you with that take and that breakdown. You are 110% right in my personal opinion on that. I think he's just phenomenal on the ball. That's why I don't want to see him go. And Rob Always United agrees with you. I'm reading here. What are these rumors that Mainoo can't run? He literally played with Casemiro last season. He was running on his own. What you find happens in the social media era of football is, well, I suppose it's an old-fashioned saying, but you see it take place a lot on social media. And that is that a lie told often enough becomes a truth. Mainoo doesn't have electric pace. So he's not Mbappe, as an example. But he's not a slouch. He's just not electric quick. So he's got good pace, very good pace. But he isn't rapid, as people would say. But this idea that you actually compare him to most central midfield players, like how many central midfield players, what percentage of central midfield players in the Prem do we think over a 10, 15-yard dash, which is the most important in the Prem, would beat him? Like how many central midfielders typically are faster than him? And that's what matters, because that's who he's competing against on most occasions. Now, if he plays further up the pitch, he's trying to run past a Van Dijk. Yeah, well, he ain't going to have the speed for that. But how many players have the speed to beat a Van Dijk? I don't quite know where this has started from. I just think it's become a bit of a myth that's turned into a bit of a truth for people. Because for Mainoo, the way he broke through, the way he took the world by storm, he went from being unheard of outside of Manchester United to become a regular starter, the youngest ever match-winning, goal-scoring man of the match in FA Cup history, I believe, or at least one of the youngest. Debuts for England, helps lead the midfield all the way to a Euros final. That was Mainoo. So what you've had since then is you get the flux reds, as I call them, the fake Man United fans who like negativity around the club, always look for a negative, always want to shit on a player. They start. Then you get rivals that are just looking for something to tear him down with. By the way, all these rivals would sign him in a second at their football club. Don't you ever think they wouldn't? City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, every single one of those fan bases from those clubs would bend over backwards, would sell a kidney, give up their grandmother, all to have Kobbie Mainoo as part of their squad. There's no doubt about that in my mind. So I don't buy into this nonsense that his physicality is poor, that his speed is atrocious, that he isn't strong. There's a very, very good and talented player in there, and I think he's only going to get better. G-Man here says, selling Mainoo at this stage in his career and keeping the likes of Delo is a madness. Though, this is where I'm going to be objective, though. You can't look at things through that spectrum. So it's the wrong way to look at it, in my opinion. And I'll tell you as to why I think it's wrong. Doesn't mean you have to change your mind. It's going to bring it down to you. Typically speaking, when we're rebuilding this squad, some players will leave before others. Let me rephrase that. The order in which people leave isn't an indication of how good or bad technically as footballers Ineos, Brailsford, Wilcock, Barada, or Amorim view the players. In terms of, say we have to sell to raise money, let's just put that permutation into this mix. Say that the club are looking at the finances, and genuinely the only way we can raise 200 million that we can then spread and spend 400 million in the window because we can amortize it. If the only way of doing that is selling Garnacho and Mainoo, One, the reason we're selling them isn't because they're worse players than others, but they're the only assets we've got to sell. There's a reason into that financially that makes sense why the low would last longer, as an example. The desire to sell. If we could raise 70 million for the low, but we chose to get rid of Mainoo instead, then I think your case in point holds a lot more water. Also, you might find that certain players, and let's not use Mainoo as an example here, just to talk generally. Some players may not fit what a manager is trying to build. So I don't think you can always look at it through that spectrum. Like Man United will have a player that might be their number one target this summer. Doesn't mean you sign your number one target first, because that deal just may take longer to come through. Emily's comment from earlier here, Mainoo, that we just was up on screen. It's just dropped off. There it is. It's gone. There it is, back. Says Mainoo is very good on the ball, which helps him play throughout the midfield. And yeah, he's just phenomenal. I find him to be such a phenomenal tactic. G-Man's come back actually and said Mainoo should be untouchable. It's about the identity of the club. No player should be untouchable. No player. I think we created a culture in the club in the last decade or so where certain players were untouchable. They can't be. You should have to be performing to a certain level, have the availability to a certain level, and delivery in games to a certain level, and then you can become untouchable. But it should be based not on whether you're from the academy, not on where you were born, not on the country you represent, and not on based on what you did 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years ago. In my personal opinion, nobody should be untouchable. However, I wouldn't get rid of Mainoo right now. I agree with you, but I don't like personally the notion of players being untouchable. Linda here says, will you be on That's Football after this? No, I won't be this evening, but I'm sure I'll be back on That's Football soon. TF does mean That's Football, doesn't it? You don't mean Football Terrace. That'd be the other way around, wouldn't it? See, my dyslexia kicked in there. And it's my initials. That really threw me. No, I'm not Linda. I won't be, unfortunately. Linda here says, does Mainoo have a role in the team? Why play a player out of position when you can sell him and use that money to buy someone who fits Ruben's system more than Kobbie? Well, that's Linda. That's a really great point from an objective perspective. If I'm being objective, I hear where you're coming from. If Ruben won't say this publicly, but if Ruben looks at it and says there's 4 or 5 players that we could buy who may not even be better than Mainoo individually, but in terms of as a piece of our system would make our team better, I get it. And that's why I've said for a while now, I will have an instant opinion on these decisions that are being made, whether I think it's good or bad. But I'm going to remain open-minded until this squad is built. Now, you can always throw the argument in, Linda, later on down the line, if we'd have kept Mainoo, we'd be even better. But it's a hypothetical. We don't know because the situation hasn't presented itself. So there'll be a lot of people that if Mainoo and Garnacho go, will go, we're finished. Where if we're lifting a trophy in 2 years' time or a Champions League in 3 years' time, they'll probably quietly skulk away and pretend they didn't say that. So I am remaining open-minded on it. However, subjectively speaking, I don't want Mainoo leaving. I will reiterate that again. This is here from Rob, Always United, with a super chat, who says, Terry, what do you think about 90 million for Bruno? Really, really good question, Rob. For me personally, I don't believe the story. I don't believe that Real Madrid would pay 90 million for him, based on his age and the fact that Real Madrid love buying players that are running their contracts down. If the story is true, though, because I believe in looking at these articles from both angles, my gut feeling is that more the day's gone on, Rob, the more I felt we shouldn't do it. Because our aim is going to be to buy young players. I think we need to keep as much experience as we can at the club. However, I get that people view this through the spectrum of, well, 90 million pounds for a 30-year-old. We could invest that in X, Y, and Z player. You could probably go out and buy 2 or 3 players for the squad that would really elevate us. And I understand that people want that investment. So, yeah, I I like Bruno Fernandes a lot. I don't want to see him leave. But I think in reality, if the club was truly offered 90 million, I think the club would accept. And I actually think Bruno as well, if he had the opportunity to go Real Madrid, whether it was for 90 million or 9 million, I also think he'd want to take it because of who they are. So, yeah, if the 90 million offer was really happening, I think the player might want to leave anyway. So we could be forced into doing that. This here from Anders Stanson says, not sure if he was dead on his feet last season, early this season, but covering for Casemiro. But Mainoo's pace is worrying for me. 70 million, Cunha and change. I don't necessarily look at it that way. I think what has happened to young Mainoo is he came into a team and a system that he'd worked on for a while. He's a young man, and suddenly the world changed. And I think there was a bit of fatigue at the beginning of the season. And it wasn't just Mainoo. I think we saw it with a lot of England players at multiple clubs. Started the season slowly. They weren't quite at the races. They weren't quite delivering to the same standards that we'd seen prior. I think it took a lot of England players time. But the time he started finding his feet, we had a managerial change. Now, in our managerial change, we didn't just say, right, manager X is taking over and just taking off from where Ten Hag left. We should have done it in the summer, but we decided we're overhauling every element of the football club from a footballing philosophy standpoint. So it takes time for a player then to adjust what he's been learning, especially as a fledgling player over a 2, 3, 4 year period. So I'm not as concerned about Mainoo as other people, but I understand why people are. I get the logic. The United Stands put a comment on here saying that maybe it's a Pedri situation with Mainoo, bursts onto the scene, shows his talent, but through one reason or another gets overplayed and injured. Yeah, look, of course, that can also happen. And that's why I don't believe any player should ever be untouchable. That's why I don't believe that that any player should be beyond scrutiny, beyond criticism. You know, like with Garnacho. By the way, if we were getting rid of Mainoo, we've always got to remember who we're replacing him with. Because maybe when we see who the replacement is, a lot of us go, he's as good or he's better. With Garnacho, a lot of the names of players we're linked to as his potential replacement, I think, are better. So as a Man United fan, not a Garnacho fan, if we improve as a team, then I'm really happy. So I just want to get better as a team. I'm not married to any one individual player having to be part of it. Although subjectively, I'd love Mainoo and Bruno, Ahmad, Yoro, De Ligt. I've been so impressed with De Ligt this year. I love what Maz has done. Of course, Dorgu's I'd love some of these players that I like watching play. I would love them to still be here in 2 or 3 years' time when we hopefully become a great team again. However, if you said, Terry, you've got to get rid of the players you love and it makes us a better team, I'm agreeing to that instantly. Every day of the week and twice on a Sunday, because the sum of our parts is more important. Is that the right phrase? How we are at the end anyway. I don't know what the saying is. I forgot what the saying is. All right. The sum of part. What is that saying? The phrase, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. That's it. That's the phrase I was looking for. Sorry. Went out my head. Man United as a whole is far more important to me than the sum of its parts. And it always has been and it always will be. I think one of the biggest problems that's come into football is I've got no issue with Americans watching our sport, American sponsors, American this, American that. I love the country of America. What I don't like, the one bad Americanism that this sport has picked up is predominantly young people, but football fans supporting players rather than clubs. I think it is a poison, a toxic piece of venom that has damaged this sport. It's horrible because often the conversations become about the players and your player being propped up more so than what's right for your football club. So for me personally, yeah, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. 110%. That is the right way to look at football. Bruno knows he is untouchable, yet he still gives 110%. But because he gives 110%, that is what makes him untouchable. He's not untouchable because he doesn't deliver. I know he had a bad start of this season, but by and large, in the last 5 years, his availability, his delivery, his output, his consistency, his work rate is why he's relatively untouchable. But if he stops scoring, stops delivering, starts getting injured, and stops working hard, he won't be untouchable. For me. Hey, don't blame Americans. That's a you thing. No, it's definitely an Americanization element of our sport. And like I've said, I'm not blaming individuals, but it's been a thing for a long time in the States for people for decades, for people to support a basketball player or a football player or a hockey player more so than the franchise they're at, and they follow them from franchise to franchise. This never happened in football until it started happening with Cristiano Ronaldo and Messi. So yes, listen, that's not a dig. And I've always said this as well, by the way. I love American sports. I follow the NFL quite closely. I love the UFC. I've spent a lot of time in America. I love it over there. But for me, I like the separation. I like European sport being sort of traditionally European, and I like American sport to be what it is. I would hate to see. I don't like to see like the merging and the crossover, because the reason I like them is because they're different from one another. That's just always been my view personally. The needs of many outweighs the needs of the few at this point. I agree with that. I agree with you. Terry, as someone watching from the States, it's very true. You see it with LeBron fans. We can't have that at United. No, I agree. It's just a very different. Culturally, it's not how we operate. The same as by the way, the same as I've been to some at college level and at like professional level. I would never try and advocate for tailgate parties to stop in the States, right? As an example of something that is culturally connected to your sport. I view that way about things with European football. There are just things, whether it's something that fans do or say, how they support, what they do before, during, and after games. There's certain things I don't want to see change because it's traditional. And supporting players over clubs is something. You often get asked that question, what law would you bring in if you ruled the world? I'd make it a criminal offense. I'd make it a criminal offense to be a fanboy. 6 months prison sentence for the first time you tweet about it. A year for the second time you tweet. Life the third time you tweet about it. It's a joke there. Like anyone fanboying, anyone putting a player over their club, prison sentence. Get rid of it. Get it out of the game. Get out. Aspinall, UFC legend. I think he could become one if listen, I love John Jones as a fighter. Sketchy outside the octagon as a fighter, I have to respect it as a martial artist myself. But Aspinall has got an opportunity to beat him, which would put him into such a level. United Stand in the comments says, life if their players is a Liverpool life if their player is a Liverpool one. G-Man here says, only see that with LeBron fans. Most Americans are diehard to their respective franchises. I think it's happened with a few others. I was watching a documentary about it where this happens, but yeah, listen, it's the right way to be. Terry, in your opinion, do you think we should sign players from outside Europe's top 5 leagues, especially if we don't win the Europa? I think we should look to sign the players that are good enough technically, good enough physically for the Premier League. I don't really care where they're from. I don't care if they're what continent they're from. I don't care what country they're from. I don't care what religion they have. I don't care about any of those things. They're irrelevant. They have to be good enough. They have to be good enough. They have to be the right profile that fits the system and the philosophy that we're building as a football club. They have to be good enough to not just work for Amorim. There has to be an overarching philosophy that we stick to as a football club. You would argue that, a lot of great players, a lot of very good players are in those top 5 leagues, but there are gems that are outside of it. Man United should have signed Caicedo for £4 million. Do you know how much money that would save us? Now, imagine him in our midfield now. There are bargains out there to be had if you've got the right data, the right scouts, and the right approach. And United used to be one of the best in the world, operating in that way. And we've kind of lost it. We've really, really lost it. And I think we need to get a lot better at that. Look at Diego Leon from Paraguay. Yeah, look, I watched half of one of his games recently. Looks talented. I don't know what he's going to be like in England, But there are great opportunities out there around the world, South America, across the continent of Africa, Asia. There are certainly talented players, technical players, that if you can sign them now for 3 million, as opposed to trying to get them for 60, 70 million in a few years' time, that makes a lot of sense to me. Mainoo has no legs. Guys, he is so overrated. That is from Graham Cox. Explain what you mean by no legs. Don't just say no legs. That's far too broad of a term, in my opinion. Delve deeper. Bring facts. And who's got more legs and how does that look? Show us, please. I'd like to understand. It's embarrassing the club the size. Sorry, it's embarrassing that a club of this size has such a poor record in recruiting players from South America. I get that. We signed Caicedo. We probably wouldn't have signed Casemiro. Imagine the wages saved. But this is also the thing with Man United fans. We chase the stuff. We often do. We're kind of bipolar in this. We'll sign a Casemiro and go, look at our pool. We're Man United. Then when he starts to struggle, we go, why don't we always sign the obvious players? Why don't we go for the obscure young player no one's heard of? I think it's about getting the balance right. But for 4 million quid, we should have signed Caicedo. We could have got Haaland before he went to Salzburg for like £1.5 million before Ollie was even our manager. And we said no. But that's because we had bankers. That's because we had accountants. That's because we had marketing experts making footballing decisions at this great institution, at this massive football club. Hopefully that's changing now. We always overpay on players, which is ridiculous. But that's because we had non-footballing people negotiating. So, yes, we had good business negotiators, but people that are good at negotiating in business, what helps them? So when I used to, one of the jobs I had as I was leaving and exiting banking is I would provide consultants to financial institutes, typically to review departments, whether it be a pension department, whether it be, it could be could be like the PPI department where they were doing refunds for people for mis-selling it. And it was doing a thematic review to ensure that we're handling those because they may be due a visit from the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority. So what my job to do was when a bank needed contractors to come in and do some reviews or to handle some work or process like a massive complaints that have come out of nowhere, my job was to go in, one, convince them that my firm had the best caliber of consultants to solve that problem, the best caliber of people to solve the problem, but also you have to do it at the right price. The boss and the owner of my company obviously wanted a good price, but of course the bank wanted it as cheap as possible. If I didn't understand the industry, understand the roles, what it costs, what the implications of a bad review would look like in terms of potential fines from the FCA, if I didn't know all this information, I couldn't negotiate a good price for my company and I. But I've been working in banking for over 10 years. The problem with the people making decisions at Man United that we're talking about is they had a bank, they had a history outside of football. Their footballing expertise was so poor. How are they meant to truly understand the value of a player? They didn't. They were viewing it like a football fan almost. And if you like the player, you're probably willing to pay whatever it takes. I've seen people talk about players we want to sign this summer. And yeah, if we think Diblin is worth 40 million, 50 max, and Southampton wants 70, we should be walking away, even if we like him, even if we rate him, because we have got to stop overpaying for players. Because one, when you set the precedent that you'll overpay, everybody will overcharge you, so you hemorrhage money. Two, it puts an unrealistic amount of pressure upon that player. Antony should have been signed for 25 million. Do you know how different we'd view Antony as a 25 million pound player versus nearly 100 million? The way we speak about him, review him, the media attention, the pressure that created, the scrutiny against the club, it would have been a world of difference. But we didn't have the right people in the positions to make that work. We absolutely ruined it. Super Arch here. Big up yourself, Super Arch. He says, we need an upgraded Park in 2025. Look, listen, a player like Park now would be amazing financially for the club because of the Asian market. I don't want us signing players where the market they would operate in commercially is great for us. It can be a secondary element of why you want a player, but the football has to come first. And Fergie didn't sign Park Ji-sung because it would make the club money. Fergie made that signing because he saw him as an integral part of the squad. And he was for many, many a year. And we've got to get that balance right as a club. Now, speaking of exits, I wanted to get your opinions on this, people. So a lot of the mainstream media has been talking today about Man United making a mistake with Rashford. Shouldn't have let him go. Look at his numbers. Look how he's performing. It's Man United are a disgrace. They've let such a great player go. How do you all see it? Genuinely, how do you all see it? I'd love to understand how you all see it. Because for me, we should be bigging this up. I see a lot of United fans angry when he's doing well. He didn't work that hard for us. He didn't run for us like that. You know, he disrespected us. Yes, his numbers look good now. Yes, his performances look good. But so much of that is because he's working hard now and he was down tooling at Man United, and I hate it. First of all, he's on loan. Big it up. At least till he's sold permanently, big it up. Same with Antony. Every time La Liga tweet about how good, forget Real Betis. Every time La Liga tweet about how good and brilliant Antony is, the club should be marking that down and saying, that's £2 more million. It's £2 more million. It's £2 more million. Maybe 3 more. And every time Man United fans see the media, the league, the clubs these players are on loan at, praise them, and Mickey take us, don't take the bait. Retweet it, share it, praise it. It's only going to raise more money. My view on the Rashford situation is very simple. Very, very simple indeed. He no longer wanted to be at the club for multiple reasons that I think stem back way before Ruben Amorim arrived. So the idea that some people are just going to blame and scapegoat Amorim for him not being here, I think it is a low IQ breakdown of the situation, personally. I think after years of turmoil with some of the fans, falling out with multiple managers, the club always being up and down in terms of our project and where we're going, I think Rashford just had enough. And you know what? I don't blame him. Football players' careers are short. They have to make selfish decisions at times, the same as clubs make selfish decisions by selling and moving people on. So I have no personal problem with what he did. The idea that Rashford was going to deliver for us in this second half of the season like he is for Villa, I think is a flawed logic. I think you are laboring under a delusion if you believe he could have done that here. The reason I don't believe he could have done it at Man United has nothing to do with his ability or lack thereof in many people's eyes. It has to do with his application. It has to do with a desire. And the example I'll give you is this. Especially in our younger years, but maybe some of us when we've been older, we've been in relationships. Not toxic relationships, not horrible relationships, but we've been with people that we say, oh, do you know what? I love her. Been together 5 years. I don't want to hurt her. I just don't want to be in this relationship anymore. The spark's gone. And what starts to happen is that normally you might go, do you know what? Friday night, we'll go to a nice restaurant. I'll bring home some flowers. We'll dress up. We'll go somewhere nice and have a great time. And maybe you should actually start doing more and more is, do you want to stay in tonight and get a takeaway? Do you want to stay in tonight? Oh, I've got my friend's party next weekend. You come in. Oh, do you know what? I'm not feeling that great. You go. I'll be fine. I'll wait up for you. I'll wait here. And this works in both directions, by the way. And you just start to put less effort in. You just start to care a little bit less. And sometimes it's subconscious because you don't really want to be there anymore. And that is what I think was happening with Marcus Rashford and Man United. I think there was this element of just not wanting to be together anymore. It wasn't about being disrespectful or nasty or toxic. It was just the relationship came to an end. And now what you're seeing from Rashford is what also happens when that couple, that hypothetical couple split up. They both start seeing new people. And you might see that, oh, hang on a minute. You didn't get your hair cut that regularly for me. Hang on, you never had a tan. You never went and got a spray tan done and did yourself up looking like that. Wow, look at the dress. Look at the shoes. Look at the new jeans. Look at the new shirt you bought, mate. You're making that effort for that new person because they've got you excited. They're making your little heart flutter. You've got the old butterflies floating around. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's new. It's normal. That's all that happened with Rashford. Don't be suckered in by the mainstream media here trying to make Amorim the enemy or Ineos the enemy. The problems with Rashford and Man United started many, many years ago. They're just looking for a resolution where he gets to be happy, the club gets to raise some money and hopefully buy someone that can replace him and that can deliver goals and be happy here with us. That's all I think this is about. That is all I think, personally, this is about. Let's have a little look here. When Rashford's PR team gave Henry Winter the heads up, it was the end of Rashford and Man United. Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. I think there is some truth to it. It needed to happen. And I think one thing United have done very poorly, there's been a handful of players that didn't want to be here that we got rid of quickly. Di Maria stands out. And I saw someone tweet the other day, can't believe we fumbled Di Maria. We didn't fumble him. He never wanted to be here. We should never have signed him. Didn't want to be here. Alexis Sanchez didn't want to be here, as an example. But when we've signed players that haven't been good enough or there's been a poor relationship, we have held on to so many of them for too long. Or players that have been past their best. They should probably last 3 more months, 6 more months. Oh, God, they're 3 years later, they're still here. That creates animosity. It creates an anger from the fans. Every time that player performs badly, they're abused and overly criticized, and that mounts more pressure. And it creates what has become at this club a very toxic environment, and it's part of it. We have to learn as fans, even if you like a player subjectively, sometimes a change is as good as a rest. And we have become terrible at that as a football club. Fergie was the best. Fergie, in fact, and he made a few mistakes, and he admitted that I think Yap Stam was a mistake in his view, but he knew when to move people on. But we trusted him, so no one questioned it. When Ruud van Nistelrooy got moved on in 2006, people went, I didn't see that coming. He's rude. But we trusted Sir Alex because the club was in good working order. We had excellent people running the football club. Yes, the Glazers had come in, I think, they came in 2004, right? 5. So they were already in. But the people running the club day to day were football people. Fergie still had a huge amount of control. Yes, it started to erode over time, but we trusted him. We've got to get back to operating better as a football club, in my personal opinion. Terry, what would you do if you were Casemiro this summer? 1 year left on your deal. Run down the contract for the sake of wanting to play football with the World Cup next year. Yeah, I wouldn't force a move per se, unless where I was going, I thought I was going to get more game time, and it gave me a better chance of going to the World Cup. I don't believe the rumors that Casemiro is going to try and stay just to earn. I don't think he's just going to try and force himself into the just stay, even if he's not playing, just to earn money. I don't necessarily think that he is going to do that. Personally, I don't think he's going to do that, but each to their own. Just bear with me 1 second, people. I was just looking for something. Can I find it? Apologies. I was just searching for something. I can't find it now, but there we go. But yes, I don't think he'll do that. Graham here says all the issues with Rashford seem to start at the same time that we signed Sancho. Coincidence? I don't think so. I wouldn't, in any capacity, be looking at blaming. I personally wouldn't blame Sancho for anything that's gone wrong with Rashford. I don't think there's any proof, there's no empirical evidence that Sancho has caused any of this. So I wouldn't make that speculation. I wouldn't put that out there. But let's say you are right. Let's hypothetically say you're right and Sancho is a bad influence. Marcus Rashford is still a grown man and is accountable for his discretions, for his behavior, for the things that he has personally done wrong. So it doesn't matter what Sancho has or hasn't done, hypothetically. Rashford is still his own fighter, his own player. Sorry, someone wrote freedom fighter in there. Rashford is still his own man and has to be held accountable. What my dear old grandmother would say is, if Sancho asked him to jump off a cliff, would he do it? If Sancho told him to put his head in the oven, would he do it? The answer is no, of course. So, yeah, I don't think. Listen, people can speculate, people can surmise, people can say he's a bad influence. Show me the evidence, the actual evidence, not theory. Show me the evidence. I don't necessarily think there is any. There could be, and I could be wrong. Let me know. Will you be doing any more watch-alongs? Yeah, watch this space. Watch this space. May we? May we? Thank you, Tony, for saying it's a great show. I really do appreciate that. How do you all feel about the game tomorrow? How do you think United are going to get on against Nottingham Forest? Because I've been on United stand quite a lot, but there's been not a lot of football since I've been doing it. I'm excited to play Forest. We know Forest are a really good team. We know they're a really, really good team. But I'm excited. I felt there was some really nice improvement in the team just before the international break. Not perfect. No, not one of the best teams in the world, but improvements. And I'm excited to see if that continues. It's a really, really big acid test indeed. United are not the favourites. United are expected to lose. But I'm excited. I'm excited about it. I'd love to get your views. I'd love to get your opinions on that, people, in the comments section below. Z here says exactly. They are both adults that should take accountability for their actions. 110%. 110%. By the way, the FA Youth Cup semi-final, is it over 2 legs? Or is it just 1 leg? I used to think it was 2 legs. I could be wrong. Has it changed? It might be 1 leg now. No, it's 1 leg now. Oh, no, is it 2 legs? No, it's 1 leg. 1 leg. That's 1-1 in the game with Man United and Villa at the minute. Oh, Villa are just in the box here. Oh, so there we go. Right now it's 1-1. 1-1 in that game. Jesus Christ, that looked like a foul. Oh, it's all kicked off. Chido Obi is right kicked off here. Oh, it's all gone off. It's all gone off. Sorry, I'm distracted. I'm not going to lie. I do love it on a football pitch when it goes off. It's exciting. It's a buzz. It's a buzz. The problem is our fans saw the likes of Jesse and Rashford as kids and kept excusing their lack of progress to kick on and be consistent. I often think you've got to look at these things sometimes and try and, I'll make sure I say this in the right way. I wouldn't excuse their lack of progression, but at the same time, I felt the club was being run poorly. And because the club was being run poorly, I wasn't frustrated that much at the kids. I wanted the club to fix itself. So I get where you're coming from, Michael. The problem is we didn't have a great environment for these youngsters to thrive in my personal opinion. Impromptu watch along. Yeah, it's become one. I've had the game on the whole time, but I've been fucking fluctuating between stories, and then it just went off, and I got distracted. But there we go. There we go. Let's have a look at some more of your comments here. We should sign Franco Ivanovic. I don't know much about him. I'm going to take a little look. 25 GA he's had recently. Interesting. I'll go and have a little look. I'll never pretend to know about a player that I haven't heard of. Discipline died off at the club at that time. Listen, Red Rebel, you're right, and that's the thing. You know, I felt obviously I criticized things, and like Rooney spoke about how he didn't like the way these youngsters were dancing and behaving in the dressing room when things started to go wrong. Those players have come and pushed back and said those things didn't happen. That's not how we saw it. But actually, you probably find they were. But the issue that you have, right, it's like Spanish customs. Do you know what Spanish customs are? Again, I always go back to my working life because I saw these things happen. But I remember when I first joined Barclays Bank as a cashier, and I was learning how to count the money and do everything. And there were things that we would say and do to customers that when I look back at now, it's almost laughable how wrong they were. Somebody would come in with their wife's debit card and we'd tell them it was illegal. It was not illegal in any capacity. It did mean that you forfeited certain, at the time, the rules have changed now, certain rules on the account, which meant if the account was defrauded, you weren't always able to get your money back because you told someone else to pin, right? But it wasn't illegal. It wasn't a criminal offense. But the Spanish custom was everybody said it. And do you know why everybody said it? Because everyone joins and then heard the experienced people say it. So everybody just said it. And there was dozens and dozens and dozens of these things that went on where people were not following the actual rules or giving out bad information, not because they were liars or because they were bad members of staff. It was just a Spanish custom that you picked up on. It was just something everybody did. So the issue that you have if a culture in the dressing room at a football club is getting bad, when you walk into the room, if that's the way everybody behaves, you may not look at it as you're doing anything wrong. So it might be 5 years later, someone says, yeah, it was so unprofessional. You may sit and go, we weren't unprofessional. We just followed the behavior of all the senior pros and they were doing it. No one told us off. No one had a go at us. But you may not think of it as being unprofessional. And it's why communication, conversation, strong leadership is always needed in those circumstances, in my personal and humble opinion. But look, everyone who's tuned in, look, I want to say a big, big thank you to each and every single one of you. We have got another poll running right now as well. So go and vote on who wins. I'm actually going to go for a draw. I'm going to vote for a draw. But please hit the like button before you go. Make sure you are subscribing. If you want to come check out my channel, The Football Terrace, come see it. We had a big panel show tonight that I'd love to get your opinions on, called the Top 6 Show, speaking all things Man United, Arsenal, Liverpool, the lot. So go and check that out right now on the Football Terrace when this show is done. It'd be amazing if you could. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, that would also be amazing if you could go and give us a little sub over there as well. But until next time, take care, goodbye, God bless, and we'll see you all again very, very soon. Thank you.